We're continuing our discussion of the holding environment this week. And I wanted to share with you a teaching I recently heard, excuse me, that's been permeating my thoughts, my heart, and my practice. And that's given me so much appreciation for the development of my own holding environment. It was a teaching by Lama Willa Baker on liminality or liminal space. I don't know if you all know that word. I had always known it in its scientific context. The liminal zone is that part of the beach that's between high and low tide that is submerged under high water and is dry during low tide. And it's the part of the beach where the tidal pools are. I used to spend a lot of time as a kid exploring those tidal pools, looking for all of the small crayfish and the water bugs, the mussels and the crabs. And I would climb over the rocks, turn over the seaweed, and find these small worlds in each pool, each one teeming with life and productivity for those animals that thrived in the in-between. What I learned from Lama Willa was that the same term has been used by anthropologists to describe certain circumstances that apply to humans. And maybe this is familiar to you, but it was a new idea to me. A liminal time is a time of transition for a society. It's an in-between place between what is no longer and what has not yet appeared. Between what we have known to be true in the past, but which isn't true as we look to the future. You might think of it as a gap between one thing and another, or a threshold as we move from one way of being to another. So it might be physical, like a doorway. It could be emotional, like a divorce. Or it could be metaphorical, like a decision. And as Lama Willa pointed out, it can also be political, ecological, social, and personal. We and the world are living through this liminal period. And we're at a point in time where the old understandings don't hold, and we don't know what comes next. So just think about it. Politically, here in the US and all over the world, things are really polarized. There are very different visions of how to govern. The direction we thought was correct is being brought into question, and there's a lot of uncertainty about our future. And ecologically, we're now getting unprecedented weather events frequently. Just like last week, South Carolina received almost 2 feet of rain in a single storm. Never heard anything like that before. Tornadoes and fires and droughts, they aren't anomalies anymore, and we don't know how to manage them or ourselves in light of them. We don't really know the fate of our Earth into the future. On a societal level, we're finding technology like artificial intelligence that's progressing faster than we can understand and manage it. And we don't really have a clear understanding of how that might influence the world in both positive and negative ways. And even personally, where relationships are now being forged on social media, we're increasingly unsure of the quality of friendships and connections that are so important to our sense of well-being. In most every aspect of our lives, we're experiencing this transition. And having it laid out for me in this way was at first kind of a shock, but also really affirming. that yes, these times are unprecedented. Things are changing, and they're changing really quickly. And so I have to reflect back, how am I able to be with them? Can I be with them? It feels so important to acknowledge that this is new territory for all of us, and that being on this threshold can evoke a myriad of feelings: grief, confusion, dread, depression, anxiety, fear, uncertainty, hopelessness, groundlessness, disorienting. And not to point out the obvious, but these feelings can be uncomfortable. So, kindness and care is really what's called for. I'm not pointing all this out to be a doomsayer at all. Actually, it's the opposite. Because sometimes out of uncertainty and groundlessness, there is the possibility for opportunity too. Just like the liminal zone on the beach, there's the potential for a lot of life if we know how to live in this in-between place. Here at the Daily Sit, we frequently say the world is on fire, right? And often that's enough. We acknowledge it, and then we focus on the skills we can develop to alleviate suffering for ourselves and others. But what I'm finding with this framing of liminal spaces is that it offers a deeper understanding of our world that is helpful and supportive, at least to me. It lets me bring the world into my practice a little more directly. Instead of just feeling that the world is chaotic, this understanding of liminal space makes sense of the chaos in some way. By identifying and explaining the uncertainty of these times, it becomes clearer that if we want to live well, instead of letting the chaos just swirl around us, we'll need to learn to lean into the uncomfortable feelings that might arise when there's so much uncertainty around. I really believe that it all starts here in our practice, that this is where we learn to stay with the discomfort and how we learn to hold it with care. Hopefully, we all know moments on our cushion when our minds and our hearts are quiet, and we can experience that sense of letting go of this moment and then this moment, and touching into the impermanence of our experience. And sometimes we become aware of that sense of not really knowing what comes next, as if we're on a threshold, breath to breath. And it can be unsettling to touch these moments. It might even be a little scary getting so close to this reality. And that's where the holding environment is so important. It provides the support to stay with all that might arise moment to moment. Without that feeling of safety and stability, we may quickly spin out and we fall into dread or fear or depression, or we start planning all kinds of things. And it happens to all of us. We lose a moment of mindfulness and we're gone down a rabbit hole of thoughts and feelings, creating stories and worries and terrible scenarios of our future. And in the atmosphere of these days that we're living in, it's easy to spin out in this way. So when that does happen, it's not too late. It's no reason to kind of reprimand ourselves in any way. Instead, as soon as we notice, we bring awareness and care, and we reconstitute our holding environment in this moment. What's going on inside? What do I need now to hold this fear? But maybe sometimes we're perhaps able to notice the uncertainty itself that is fueling the dread and the fear. And then we wonder, can we hold this? Can we try to get to know it before our mind spins out? Not until recently have I really explored the feelings associated with uncertainty. And what I'm learning is that it has a particular quality in my body. I might describe it as vulnerable. It's exposed. It's maybe a little shaky. It has some edgy energy to it. But it's very different from the feelings of dread and fear and depression. And almost immediately, when I can notice and name vulnerability, a tender feeling of care and compassion arises. When that first happened for me, it was such a surprise. I noticed it on a plane flight, and I don't really like flying, and I especially don't like turbulence. So when we started bouncing around a little bit, I could feel myself quickly tightening up and feeling fearful. And I always make a point of practicing a lot on flights because it is calming. And I learn something each time. So at first, in this moment, when I was feeling turbulence, I just held my fear. I felt the tight constrictions in my belly. I watched how the fear was arising from thoughts of, oh, I don't like this. I feel out of control. I don't know how long this will last. And as I explored, I actually noticed that the thoughts were generated from a feeling of vulnerability. And if I could rest in the vulnerability itself, if I could hold that shaky, not knowing feeling, it was a much sweeter experience. It was really tender in a way, and it brought tears. There was such a relief to it. Our holding environment is built for these times. It allows us to offer ourselves a place of stability, a place we know and that we can trust within ourselves, that lets us rest in the uncertainty of the present and to care for ourselves moment to moment. Pema Chodron wrote a whole book called Comfortable with Uncertainty. And in it, this is what she says. Sticking with uncertainty is how we learn to relax in the midst of chaos, how we learn to be cool when the ground beneath us suddenly disappears. We can bring ourselves back to the spiritual path countless times every day simply by exercising our willingness to rest in the uncertainty of the present moment over and over again. And I really feel that this is what the world needs. People that are able to stand in the liminal space, to lean into the uncertainty and the vulnerability and find stability within it. The holding environment offers us the ability to find that stability. We feel it inside, within ourselves. And I think we know from experience that our stability has ripples outwards, that others can feel it too. And it makes a difference. So this is just a very short quote from Joseph Goldstein that I think also captures this. He says, On a boat in the middle of a great storm, one wise, calm person can bring everyone to safety. So thank you all for your attention. Let's transition into our practice. First, as always, bringing our attention to our bodies. We know how to offer them what it is they might need right now, today. Stretching, energizing if that's what you need. And as that feels complete, coming slowly into a place of stillness. And letting yourself settle. Whatever might be swirling in your mind. See if you can let it go just a bit. And let your mind settle on the sensations of your body. The tinglings, the temperature, perhaps the rising and falling of your breath. Feeling the aliveness. And maybe for a few moments, resting your attention in your heart space. And also noticing the aliveness there. Inviting in maybe some warmth, some interest. Letting that guide your practice of awareness, of moment by moment presence. What is it that you need today? Just sustain your moment to moment mindfulness. Do you need a lot of internal spaciousness or maybe intimacy close up? Really staying tuned to what those needs are and creating a container that allows for all of it. And it might change even through one sitting, but being flexible and allowing. No matter what is arising in your practice, I wonder if you can notice underneath a sense of steadiness or stability that comes from the being with and the holding. Just noticing that, getting to know it a little bit.